All right, well, let's talk about the title of your book. What do you mean by trickle-down tyranny?
Well, on New Year's Eve, while people were partying, our president passed the National Defense Authorization Act, which to this day nobody knows whether it gives him the authority to arrest people without a trial. People, some say it does, some say it doesn't, ambiguous. The other day, last week, he thought a microphone was off. He leans over and talks to Medvedev of Russia and says, after I'm reelected, not if I'm reelected, I'll have more flexibility to do what? To screw Czechoslovakia and Poland? Now we wake up this morning, the Wall Street Journal reports that the president is using more executive orders than Bush did. And while he was a senator, he said, I will not abuse the executive orders. Today his spokesmouth says, when he was a senator, he didn't know how many important things there were to do as president, so he has to use executive orders. These are just the tip of the iceberg.
Why do you think President Obama, let's talk about that Wall Street Journal piece, why do you think the president had a change of heart once he got into the Oval Office?
It's simple. Lord Acton said it best in the 1940s when he said power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it's not limited to him. We all understand that politicians are an interesting species. They're egomaniacs, they're driven to succeed, they're driven to rule other people. And so we live in a participatory democracy where those instincts, when they get out of control, are supposed to be reined in by a separation of powers, correct?
That's what we were taught. That's what we were taught in social studies anyway.
Yeah, that's the theory. So the idea of an executive order is quite worrisome in a democracy to begin with. My fear is that if you look at Mr. Obama's history, it's not a mystery. His history is not a mystery. I hate to sound like one of the reverends who don't have a degree in theology, but the fact of the matter is he has quite a history and it ain't no mystery. What do I mean by that? You go back to his background. Do I have to mention Reverend Wright? 20 years of anti-American rhetoric, 20 years of black nationalism, a good friend of Louis Farrakhan. This makes people very uncomfortable. They don't even want to hear it. We have to hear it. He was not vetted as a candidate. Okay, so now we have 3 years of the president. What has he really done that's so wrong? Let's start with bread and butter issues. He inherited a $1 trillion deficit. Anyone can understand that. Bush was I called him a fiscal socialist, by the way. I called President Bush a fiscal socialist. Wow, what does that make me? Makes me a realist because I saw what Bush was doing. Obama now, instead of tightening the belt of our economy, has expanded it to a $3 trillion deficit. Runaway spending ends in disaster. How does it stop? Where is the give and take in all of this?
Well, let's talk about that Wall Street Journal article a second. We could backtrack because it also mentioned several other examples of presidents who faced criticism for using executive power. As voters, what should we keep in mind as we head to the polls in November of 2012, and how can we limit that pervasive use of executive power?
That's such a great question, because I've got to answer it by quoting myself without just speaking off the cuff. And it's a two-line answer. In Trickle-Down Tyranny, I open the book with an amazing chapter called Advice to the Next President, and it starts like this. Economies can be rebuilt, armies can be repopulated, but once a nation's pride is gone, it can almost never be restored. The loss of a nation's honor is something not even centuries can repair. The next president must love America. Now, what do I mean by that? In all of the debates going on, have you heard anyone say they love America? Does anyone talk about our loss of honor, our diminished status in the world? To me, the honor of a nation is what's at stake. I wish Romney would show some spine and some backbone and talk about America's greatness and America's wonders. I don't hear that. All I hear is a technocrat talking about how he's going to tweak this or tweak that. I want a man of leadership. That's what we should be looking for.
Let's focus back on President Obama and his administration along the same lines of the Defense Authorization Act of 2012. Attorney General Eric Holder recently stated that the federal government has the authority to kill U.S. citizens without a trial, as was the case with the American-born al-Qaeda operative Anwar al-Awlaki. What was your reaction to Holder's justification for al-Awlaki's killing?
When they came for the terrorists, I did not raise my voice because I was not a terrorist. Who's next? This is a very dangerous precedent. I opposed it when it occurred. We all know al-Awlaki was a dangerous man, anti-American. He deserved to be rounded up and tried, but he didn't deserve to be whacked like we have a mafia running the country. It's very worrisome indeed, because we don't know who tomorrow will be an enemy of the state.
Another thing you talk about in your book, of course, is President Obama's cuts to the military, and you say it's been done so to a dangerous level. The military is facing even steeper cuts with the coming sequestration. Do you think there's any way that those cuts can be avoided?
We have the smallest Navy since World War I. At the same time that China is building its aircraft carriers, building its submarine fleet, building its space capacities, building the capacity to fight a war in space, Obama not only did what you just said, but he's also eliminated NASA's moonshots. We're now passengers. Can you imagine we have astronauts sitting on a Russian rocket in our lifetime and no one even understands the implications of this? The real question is, if we get a Republican administration, can we reverse some of the damage to the military in time to protect our national interests, our national security interests? I think that's the real issue.
And I want to go back to the passage you read from your book a few moments ago. You didn't say this right then, but it follows what you said. And you say the next president needs to be the, quote, exact opposite of Barack Obama. Do you feel like any of the current Republican candidates for president fit that description?
No, none of them are the exact opposite. None of them are the visceral, in my opinion, America-loving national type of the order of Barry Goldwater. You say, well, who was he? To me, he was the greatest of all of the conservatives because he was a very balanced conservative, clearly patriotic. I remember Goldwater's statement, extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. Moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. I thought that was one of the greatest campaign lines I've ever heard in my life. I don't expect to see a Goldwater in this age, but I'd like a little bit more Americanism coming from Mr. Romney, who all I hear is, if I'm elected, I'll save America. It sounds like he's running for the presidency of a high school rather than the presidency of the United States. This is the problem. Now, will I vote for Romney personally? I certainly would. Why? Because on the issue of national security alone, I would sleep better at night. On the issue of how he would deal with Islamic terrorism, I would sleep better at night. On the issue of lowering corporate and individual income taxes, I would sleep better at night. Those reasons alone are enough for me to vote for Mitt Romney. I just like to see a little more visceral America loving.
And do you see anybody out there, perhaps since there isn't that candidate for 2012, but perhaps for 2016 that fits that description of the exact opposite of Barack Obama?
Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump, I love Donald Trump's politics. In some ways, he and I have crossed paths. I mean, I'm a member of his club, to be very clear, in Florida. I think I have to disclose that. He's not a personal friend of mine. He hasn't come over to dinner recently. But the thing is this. I called for tariffs on China 2 years ago in my last book, Trickle Up Poverty. I said we should impose a 20% tax on China-made goods. Donald Trump said the same thing about a year and a half ago. He still believes that we have to impose tariffs on China, or we're going to wind up with nothing manufactured in this country. So the answer is Donald is a very straightforward, loves the military, has pride in the country, and he's a smart businessman. What more could we ask for?
All right, there you have it from the host of radio's The Savage Nation, Michael Savage. His book, Trickle-Down Tyranny, Crushing Obama's Dream of the Socialist States of America, hits bookstores on April 3rd. It's available for pre-order now on Amazon.com. Michael, thanks for talking to us.